Have you ever asked the question, what are the lives behind the missionaries? What does MK stand for? Today we will go over this with our special guests all around the world. They're missionary kids who now go to Moody Bible Institute in Chicago. Hello, my name is Sarah, and I am your host. Today we are collaborating with MKinos, an MK organization who connects and serves MKs in California annually by opening a winter retreat for MKs. Hello, guys! Woo! Can you guys introduce yourself?
My name is Becca. I'm a senior at Moody Bible Institute. I'm studying human services, wanting to be a counselor one day. I am from the United States, but I grew up in France and Greece as a missionary kid.
Hi guys, my name is Abby, and I'm also a senior here at Moody, and I'm majoring in integrated ministry studies. My parents are both American, but I was born and raised in Korea, and I grew up on a volcanic island called Jeju, so yes.
Hi guys, my name is Micah, and I grew up in Asia, and I was born in the States, and my family has 7 people, so we trekked across the world with a lot of people, but it was an exciting adventure. Major is integrated ministry studies.
Hi guys, I'm Young Kwon. I'm a sophomore here at Moody Bible Institute. I'm studying theology, and though I was born in Korea, I grew up in the Amazon, Brazil.
I want to ask, when did you become an MK and when did you realize that you're an MK?
The moment that I realized when I was an MK was as soon as I recognized that, oh, wait, I'm a bit different. So back in Brazil, like being the only Asian there, right, speaking another language, not knowing the culture, I was like, wait, something's not right here. Something's different. And so I asked my parents, and that's when they explained it to me, that I was an MK.
The time I was 2, my family was support raising and going to a bunch of different churches and moving around the U.S. So I think I always knew that I was different. But I think the first time that I fully realized is when I went into public school for the first time at the age of 5 and didn't speak a lick of French. And I realized that I was different, really, and couldn't fit in.
Then what was the first thought when you went to the mission field? What was the first thought? You landed in, for example, for me was Uzbekistan. I was shocked. They were all speaking Russian. I just learned Korean. I was 4 or 5 years old, and I was blah, 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 because I thought my parents won't understand me. So how was your first, time when you, landed there? What was your thought?
Oh, this is so scary. I don't know. I don't know what's happening, and I could feel my parents' stress, and I could feel the fact that, they felt uncomfortable, too, and were, nervous. So, yeah, I just remember being scared.
Feeling the feeling of adventure, because we were packed up. We had some, stuff we brought, and I remember I had, a Lego set that I was ready to set up once we got there. That was, my parents' way of saying, hey, all right, let's make it there safely. Let's get to our house. Let's settle down a little bit, unpack, and then, we brought some fun things to go. And it was just I know I'm going across the world, but I also, I feel at home. So I didn't really recognize it immediately.
I really start to remember about the mission field was when we moved from the mainland of South Korea down to Jeju. And if you've ever been to Jeju, we get a lot of typhoons there. And so the first day that we arrived was a really dark, stormy typhoon night. And Jeju's a tropical island, but that night it was probably the worst it's ever looked. And I just remember my parents, I was probably 8 or 9, and my parents were just staying up late, just putting beds together for us to sleep in. I was just I don't really like this place.
Was there any cultural difference? So you landed, now you're in that mission field, and now you have, some kind of cultural shock. Was there any, first thing that you realized, oh, this is different?
The small difference, but the immediate one that I had was probably their method of greeting. In Brazil, we would kind of give a kiss on both cheeks. And so at first I was whoa, what's going on? I was hang on, hang in there. It's just a memory that I have that, oh wow, this is indeed a different culture. And I will have to embrace it someday.
Was there any difficulties you experienced because you were an MK? Any difficulties? I mean, come on, be honest. There's a lot. Yes, Becca.
Yeah, I can go. I mean, so many. First off, language barrier. As I said, I went into public school not knowing any French. And the French kids they can be nice, but they can also be ruthless like any other kids. So that felt like such a big deal of knowing that like I didn't fit in, like there was no way for me to fit in, and like I felt very unsafe, not in like that my life was in danger, but it was like I just had no idea what was going on around me, but I was at school and I had enough understanding to know that like what school meant and what it should be like. Feeling not like understood by the French kids very like early on, or people would ask me like, what are you guys doing here, and like not knowing how to explain what we're doing here because they really had no concept of God and didn't see God in a good way. So those were like the first couple things that I was like, this is really hard. And also my family felt very like alone, which made us like stick together. But that was really hard because I knew all of my family was like feeling the same as me.
I felt kind of alienated from other people. It wasn't like one specific thing that I can, remember. Like I remember a lot of different details, the food, even the toys, the places, the street signs, just not being able to understand anything, especially when we first arrived. Feeling different made me feel a little bit isolated, and I kind of tended to be more introverted and just keep to myself. And so it wasn't all bad, but it was just like shocking to go from somewhere where I could be a part of everything, I could play with my classmates, I could reach out, I could read, and then all of a sudden I feel like, I guess like a toddler again, I can't read, I can't speak, and people are asking me questions and I don't know what to say. So I think, yeah, maybe if I were to summarize it, the language was really just made me feel isolated.
I think much like Becca, I felt a lot of difficulties in the schools. So as an MK, we all know that we move from places to places, like quite often. And so it was hard enough to already get used to a particular school, because at first there's that one Asian kid, you go in the classroom and there's like a awkward silence for a moment, and then they kind of get back to it. But so let's say we stayed 2 years on a particular school. We begin to make friends, but then God calls us somewhere else. And so it's a whole another journey.
Never grew up with any kids my age. Besides my siblings, I only had college students to hang out with. That did have a big impact on, I think, who I am today and the way that I grew up, because it was kind of like I was either the cute kid or I was going to be the mature adult. And there was no real middle ground for me to struggle with being a teenager. And so that was hard.
Now that we have talked about difficulties, I want to ask you, how did you experience Christ's love throughout the hardships you faced?
Because I kind of tended to put on a bit of a mask when I was with people outside of my home, trying to be really mature and like an adult. I think I was so grateful to my family, because whenever I would go home, they were just fine with me being me. And they knew the expectations that were put on me. So when I was at home, I was really comfortable. And that safe space was so important to me.
Very similar to Abby. I also was I'm the youngest of 6 kids. So I was constantly around people that were older than me. And what you said about either being like the cute kid or the mature adult, I feel that so much of like either I was the annoying little sister or I was hanging out with 20-year-olds as an 8-year-old. Our family was the only people that really understood what we were going through. And so I think I felt Christ's love for me really in my parents and how much they took time to try and understand what I was going through and like hear me out and listen. And they understood that they had already put me in a really hard situation. So they never pushed me too much. If there was something that I was like literally like, I cannot do this, they were like, okay, like we understand that. You're in a country that's not your own. Like we get all of your fears. And then I think another way is through missionary kid friends. And honestly, growing up, missionary kids were the only ones that like had any idea what I was going through. Like going up to someone and like we could immediately connect, like how I felt with like all of you. Like there's an instant connection and it's instant like, okay, I'm comfortable and I don't need to explain all of the craziness in my life because you've had the same story, just different. And so I think I felt Christ's like love through that a lot.
The way I experienced Christ's love most was through my parents as well. So as we were moving deeper and deeper, it was getting tougher and tougher, right? Relationally, spiritually, emotionally. And the harder it got, I remember we would have a service at night as a family together. And as a teenager, of course, I don't want to like spend my time doing service every day, right? So I'd be wondering, man, why? Again, we did it yesterday, but why today? But afterwards, I asked my parents, and they told me, here in the mission field, there's only so much that we can do for you. So take, for example, safety. There's only so much that we can protect you. So, for example, there were so many times when our neighbors got assaulted. A person died in our school. And who's to say that could have been me, right? And so my parents knew that. And every day, I think it was that commitment to God. Take care of our sons, take care of our daughter, because I have a sister as well. So I think it was through their example that I most felt the love of God.
All right, so now that we talked about Christ's love, I want to ask you guys what encouraged you to continue the path of your faith journey. I want to ask you about that. Say hi to our friends. Bye. Okay, there are some of my friends over here, so your friends as well. Okay, so what encouraged you to continue the path of faith? Tough question, huh?
Like, you hear a lot about missionary kids and the struggles they go through, and the experience they have aren't always good. And it definitely, you hear a lot of stories about people walking away from the faith. And I think I definitely had a really rough time in my last few years being an MK in that country. I think it was really the grace of God and the wisdom of my parents, really, because they told me, we really want you to go to 1 year of Bible school. And so my parents were like, okay, go to 1 year of Bible school. And I agreed, even though I was kind of in a spiritually desolate place and I just was feeling burnt out and I didn't know how to deal with that. And I think that whole plan and my parents' guidance, and I think that's a common theme we're seeing today, is my parents' guidance. Even when I wasn't listening to what God was saying, my parents were being used by God to guide my path. And so that year of Bible school was probably the most transformational year of my life. And I came from a closed country and then going to a Bible school and an open country. That just changed my whole world. And I realized there was a lot of stuff that I didn't know how to deal with and a lot of pressures that I couldn't unpack until I had left the field. And I just am very thankful that God allowed me to see that, because I could have very easily been one to walk away if I didn't have a space where I really needed to depend on God. Even, COVID isolated me. Like, I had to travel internationally by myself and I couldn't rely on my parents anymore. I couldn't be with my siblings. I was kind of alone in a new place. And in those moments, I reached to God, and He was really faithful to even change the path I'm on now. And now I'm at Bible school in Chicago, and it's something I've fell in love with, and I want to continue to serve. So it's a complicated thing, and I know everyone has a different experience, but I just am so thankful for God's grace in my life.
Yeah, so like Micah, I did come to a point where I wanted to let go of everything, just give up in my faith, right? But when you ask what kept you going, I think it was the belief that though I didn't know what God's plan was or God's will was, there was a plan. So that's what my parents told me all this time. Why are we here? I would ask them. And they say, oh, God has a plan for us here, right? God sent us here. And so even though they didn't know the reason, simply having a faith that there is a reason helped them. Right? So I think in the same way, there is nothing else to hold on to. That moment I realized, oh, wait, the God that my parents told me about, the God that split the sea, right? The God of Abraham. I remembered him one last time, and that was when I prayed to God as a last resort, and by His grace, that's where He met me. Yeah.
Growing up, my parents, in a lot of ways, just like you guys were saying, were very much what kept me going. And seeing my parents put themselves in places where they weren't comfortable, seeing my parents learning French and going to language school for 2 years and feeling like idiots and feeling like toddlers because they couldn't speak the language, and then moving to another country, moving to Greece and doing that all over again. So I think seeing like the Lord's faithfulness to my parents, I felt that as well. But I think in high school, I questioned a lot my salvation because I was saved. Like, I prayed the prayer when I was like 4, and I honestly did it because my older sister had just done it, and I was like, well, if she's gonna do it, I'm gonna do it. And so I think growing up, it always felt like that was really fake. And so I felt like I didn't have that radical testimony of like the Lord met me in this moment and my life was completely changed. It's like he's always been here. He's always been a for sure thing. I never really questioned it because I've seen him in my like parents' life and in my family so much. And this is what my family's all about. So I think in high school, it was a lot of questioning of like, am I really saved? Am I really loved by the Lord? My like last 2 years of high school, all of my siblings were out of the house. So it's just very much me and my parents and figuring things out on my own. And my new, like, it was the first time I had friends my own age, really. And I think that really helped a lot, seeing God's love for me. And he met me a lot in those moments because there was a lot going on. And he was really faithful to me and all of that. And even just like coming to Moody, like I very much felt like the Lord was like, no, I want you here. And I knew that if I had gone to a college that was secular, I wouldn't walk out as a Christian. Like, I knew that for a fact. I was like, I am not like like I don't have it in me. I'm not strong enough in my faith to go to a secular school. So that's why I chose Moody, because I was like, I need to be in a space where I can actually grow in my faith and be safe in that, because I wasn't safe in that growing up. I was in my family, not in the countries. Yeah. Everybody gets a clap.
Everybody is. Micah didn't get a go. Let's give him a clap. Abby, do you want to share?
Me and Becca. Telepathy. Okay.
All the youngest, raise your hands.
Yeah, I think that I also went through a period of doubting, because on the mission field, I feel like you see a lot of, well, I think it depends on where you are, but a lot of missionary kids, they see a lot of revival meetings or like, camps, that kind of stuff, where lots of people their lives are getting changed or whatever. And seeing that and then looking at my own life and being like, well, I became a Christian when I was 6 and I didn't see some 180, I think that was something that I had to wrestle through, and I had to come to the point where any believer has to come to, where you have to realize, am I resting on how fervently I can pray, or how to what degree I'm emotionally connected to Christ, how much I believe, how sincere I am, or am I resting on God's promises? Am I resting on what Jesus promised to me? And I didn't get there right away, but finally I came to the point where I was like, yeah, I'm going to heaven because of what you said, not because of what I said. And it wasn't my parents' faith anymore, it was mine. And yeah.
Your own
Thank you.
faith, yes. We do encourage our fellow MKs who are watching this to actually meet your God, not your parents' God, but your own personal relationship with Christ. We continue and you can meet God. Yeah, we pray for that. What is your most memorable memory from upbringing from the country with your parents or with, anyone else? But good memories. We talked about difficulties and all that. But we have good parts. Let's talk about, Becca, you've been all over Europe, right? That's something to brag about. MKs, we have some good things in our lives happening. Let's brag about it. Some things, let's be honest, there's a lot of good privileges we get, Let's talk about that. Let's be real. Who wants to go first?
Who wants to brag first?
I want to say this girl has a lot to brag about. This girl eats Korean food all the time at Korea. Okay. Oh. I'm a host. I don't speak.
Okay. Yeah, no, go for it. Go for it.
Oh, I just go last because everyone else.
I felt Sarah being like, talk. So you go, Abby.
Go ahead, Abby.
No, this was the question I looked at and was like, this is the hardest to answer, because there is no singular moment. I feel like we can all say that. There's just so many good memories that come to mind, and just the unique privileges that you have. I grew up with a lot of international people. What a blessing that is to be able to see so many different cultures. I had both my my family life, which involved homeschooling and just like baking with my mom and doing all these kinds of stuff and finding like creative ways to bake American recipes with Korean ingredients. You know, that kind of stuff, just little random memories like that. And then my social sphere where, yes, I was with college students a lot and that was weird, but in so many cases they really took me in and showed me a lot of love. So it's not a woe is me. It's, wow, God really blessed me so much, and I wouldn't change it for the world. It was an amazing experience.
Mike, I want to share?
Yeah, I really want to echo that. I'm not going to brag because, I'm not going to brag, but I want to echo that because you're put into such a crazy place, but yeah, it's not all crazy bad. Most of it is crazy good, you know? The people, the place itself, and like that feeling of exploring and adventure on the side of the ministry aspect. And as a MK, especially when you're there young, you're not always involved in the ministry. And so as you're growing up, you're kind of just experiencing this as a culture. But I just think, especially the people that you get to meet and the people that do reach out to you and those experiences where you just... like they invite you to their house and they host and they cook for you, and there's some really special people that made special moments for us and made me and my family feel welcome. And those are the relationships that not only, you know, benefited us and just our knowledge of the culture, but they were also like ministry partners and relationships, and even teammates that you go to these countries with. They become so close to you and so important in your life. And so, yeah, like anywhere you live, whether it be in your home country or not, there's just so much value that to really like seek those relationships. And those were probably the coolest things for me, even though, yeah, I struggle to make friends sometimes. But yeah, it was still great.
I think one of the best things is that you can live two nationalities in one body. So you experience and know both. But the Korean culture, when you're with family, you eat the Korean food. But then in the mission field or at your school, you're playing with Brazilian friends, eating their food, talking their language. I grew up in a boarding school, so I can say that I hunted. And after that, we'd go swimming together. We would try to hunt like birds. We wouldn't always catch them, but yeah, mostly birds. We would have like rodents, kind of, maybe that big. And so yeah, we would do those things. So I think it's a touch with the nature. Yeah, that was a huge blessing for me.
Oh, did your soccer performance, since you're in Brazil, you know, the famous place of
Yes,
soccer, so did your soccer skill improve?
yes, I did. I actually did get the MVP once for varsity.
Brag about that.
Yes,
There's something
I'm
that's still-
flexing a little bit.
Yeah, as an MK, how is that? It's a privilege, you know?
Yeah, it
Study
is.
abroad, but like 24/7.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure, it was a blessing. Every country comes with their own sports, and that's a huge benefit for sure.
Oh my gosh, there's so much. I mean, even the two countries that I lived in, France and Greece, are so beautiful. So the scenery of like living in Greece, I was in the Alps, so I was literally in the mountains. Like like for our PE class, we would go skiing.
Wow.
Like what in the world? And this was normal to me. I was just like, that's normal. And then we moved to Greece and we lived in Athens, and we were there like 20.
Oh, dream.
We're like 20 minutes away from the beach and like the Acropolis, and so much rich history of like the Bible, and like standing where Paul stood and like preached Acts, knowing that like Paul stood here, and I'm just sitting here hanging out with my friends, and like usually it was MK friends or internationals, and like that was just such a cool experience and such a cool privilege. And I got to dive into like two very different cultures, and again, living with international people, and like had internationals like living in my home, and just it's such a blessing to grow up with people who are not like you, because I think you learn a lot soon enough to like be more flexible, to ask questions, to listen first, and to not like be like this is the way it should be. But yeah, and then also my parents like pulled me into ministry when I was like 13, and so I got to start serving other people in that way and work along my parents and like feel valued in that way. So I mean, I could go on forever about the amazing experiences that I had, again, came with a lot of hardship, but it was, like Abby said, I wouldn't trade it for the world. Yeah.
Let's give it up. Whoa, let's give it up for Rebecca, Micah, Abby, and Youngwon. Okay, this is awesome. Wait, like, since you reminded me of the languages, so can we talk about language? Okay, so as an MK, we learn, the language. And this is a really big privilege, and it's really good for job, for future job. I mean, you guys are so talented because you are already, like, having second language, which a lot of American students who are in, America might not experience, or even Korean students in Korea. Can you talk about that?
It helps me to express things that I just can't express in the other language. Like, there's just, even the way that I talk in Korean is different than the way I would talk in English. Just my tone is even different.
Can you say a little words? Like a little sentence?
안녕하세요. 제 이름은 에비 니콜스예요. 저는 미국 사람이에요.
So cute. 애교. 애교.
고마워요. No, but it's like, yeah, and just in Korean, you say like 아이고. And that is just an expression you can use for anything. And we don't have that in English. So sometimes I just have to whip it out. And so I just love how it doesn't just broaden your vocabulary, it broadens the way you can express yourself between different groups of people. And it does help me connect with Koreans in a really special way. Like being here at Moody, I'm able to connect with the Koreans because of that. So I think that's really cool.
아이고, thank you.
네, 감사합니다.
All right, guys. How much did your parents include you in their ministry?
My parents, it was like we were their team members because we didn't have a lot of staff. And one vivid memory that I have was when we first were starting to build the Bible Institute. The property that we got was a jungle, pretty much. It was just lots of trees and weeds and all kinds of stuff, and we were just like hacking away. And finally we had this like soccer field area, and they had plowed it, and so it just had dirt and rocks in it, and we had to take out all the rocks. So it was just me, my parents, and my siblings just taking out rocks.
Actually?
Yeah, just taking out rocks for a really long time. And if you know anything about Jeju Island, it is a volcanic island, and there are only rocks. There's barely any dirt. So we were just taking out rocks to find more rocks. But that was part of the ministry. It wasn't just like winning people for Christ. There's other stuff. There's physical labor that you have to put into it too. That is also ministry. And we were a part of every little single step, it felt like, with our parents.
I have a funny story because we're super involved in the ministry in weird ways, or like you don't really think of it as ministry when you're the kid, but like we met in our house, and so even something as much as, oh my goodness, we're out of toilet paper, one of us needs to run to the store to get toilet paper because people are going to be over. Like, so whether or not you classify that as a ministry, I mean, we were put to work. But yeah, we were just like as kids involved in all the little details. And then it wasn't until I became a teenager that I got more involved in like youth group and actually getting to help guide some of like youth group studies and even sometimes understand exactly what my parents were doing. And in that regard, once I kind of knew what was going on and I became more understanding of, what's happening around me, I was able to be a help to that, because when you're a kid, you're living your separate life. And then once you begin to realize that, and once you kind of grow a little bit in your faith, you realize, oh, I can help. And even just being obedient sometimes was a big help to your parents who are trying to have a conversation with a missionary or a local believer. And yeah, so it definitely shifted from when I was young to when I was older, but I definitely was involved.
That servant leadership out there.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Toilet paper,
That is
let's
ministry.
go.
I tell you what.
We, for the bloopers, we almost did a skit when we were back in the States. We almost did a skit where because we had like a conference, and we almost did a skit where my parents were going to be like setting up the house, and then we hear a knock on the door and they're like, Micah, go run to the store to get toilet paper, like in front of the congregation. But we didn't do it. Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
With me, yeah, my parents involved us, like me and my siblings, with basically everything from church planting. So we'd be like digging the septic tank, and then we'd be carrying bricks, mixing cement, and then at the same time helping our mom do the laundry and stuff. And I think all of that was very intentional for our experience, and also because I think they wanted us to know that this is also our mission, not just theirs. It's good to be a part of it.
Anyone else want to share?
Yeah, definitely. When we were in France, my school was my ministry, and my mom was like a stay-at-home mom at that point. So like her ministry was like getting to know my friends' parents and like getting involved in the school and helping out with stuff. We all did that together, and then once we moved to Greece, I started doing so much ministry. Maybe too much, but it was really fun, and I wanted to. It finally felt like, because I had been playing catch up with all of my siblings and I was the youngest, it was finally like, yeah, I can do something, even if it's just making sandwiches for 30 refugee women every day, or it's doing this thing called Operation Joshua and handing out Bibles to Greek people, or if it's Exit and help giving out food to homeless people, or if it's being on the planning team for all of these things. So, and all of this was stuff that my parents were working on, and it was in this mission that we were helping with. So, definitely. And I do think that I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to do all of that.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
By hearing you guys' story, I'm thinking of you guys as little missionaries. Do you agree with that? Like little missionaries? Do you think we should put the kids out like missionary? Or do you identify yourself as missionary kid? And what do you think missionary kid is? You know, what does MK mean? Yeah, Abby?
I actually have been thinking since coming to college, how long can I call myself a missionary kid?
As long as you want.
Because it's like,
As
yeah,
long
I'm
as
a
you
missionary kid from South Korea, but then I'm like, but I'm 20. I'm a missionary kid? So now it is kind of this period where it's like, how do I introduce myself? Do I say I was a missionary kid and now I'm going to college, or I was a missionary and now I'm going to be a missionary? It's a kind of new territory that I'm navigating. So I don't think I really have an answer to that yet, but you saying that is something that's real for me right now, figuring that out.
Yeah,
I see.
literally, Abby, you and I are thinking so similarly.
You guys scripted this. I know, you guys
We
scripted
planned
this.
ahead.
Come on.
Yeah, actually, the sister right above me is named Abby, so
Okay.
it's a little, so it's a little weird. It's
You
a
guys are
little
like,
weird.
me too. Same.
I just want to be like my sister. But literally, I've been thinking of that all week of like, it's been 4 years since I've lived with my parents and been a missionary kid. And now I'm a senior and I'm married and I'm about to like go into grad school and
Yes,
like,
you are married. Woo! Give it up for Becca. She's the first friend that got married in my circle. I'm proud of her.
I was. But it's like, how do I introduce myself?
Can you
'Cause
show
I've always
us your
been-
ring, please?
That's
show off your
nice.
Wow.
There it is.
She's taken,
Shine.
guys. I'm sorry.
Yes.
She's beautiful and she's taken.
Oh my god.
I am single. Let's cut that.
Yeah, but like, how do I, going forward, it's like, when do I stop saying missionary kid? Because that's all I said. That's the first thing I'll tell you. I'm a missionary kid. And now it's like, well, I'm a wife.
Missionary wife.
And like that doesn't, like, where do I stop? And like, when do I stop? Yeah, when does my missionary kidness like stop affecting me, or does it never? Or like, when, like, to my kids, if I have kids, like, what would that be like, raising them of like, I'm a missionary kid? And so, yeah, I don't know. I feel like a missionary kid is someone who's gone to the mission field with their parents, and the decision wasn't really their own. But yeah, who knows when we stop being missionary kids, if we ever do. So
Oh, what do you guys think? Can you guys answer that question?
We had this kind of existential crisis where we were like, what do we call a missionary? Like, are we being too broad with the term? Are we, what is the difference between missions and ministry? Especially when we're thinking about the global church and everything is more connected these days. And so what constitutes a missionary, what constitutes a minister. And I think for me, I wouldn't necessarily call my younger MK self a missionary. I think MK or missionary kid is the appropriate term because I was involved in ministry, and I think a lot of the MK connotations is that you were. I know there are some MKs that definitely did not thrive where they were placed, and so I can't speak for every MK. But I also want to reserve the term, I guess, for someone who is really like gonna uproot themselves in their adult life and in their decision to obey God for the call. I want to reserve that term for them because the command to go and go somewhere that's unreached is a really high calling, and it's a really hard job. And I think that all believers are called to do ministry. And so even when I went to my first year of Bible school, I did missions work in a sense, but it was a lot of ministry under other missionaries, and I wasn't doing it by myself. And even the other year that I was there, I volunteered for the year, and I was technically a missionary under an organization, but it still felt like ministry because I wasn't really learning the native language, and I wasn't ministering to the local people. I was a part of a training ministry. And so, yeah, I guess if that helps anyone like in their how to unpack these things, but yeah, I think there is it's not one is necessarily greater than the other, but I think there's a way to distinguish them and know where you kind of sit in that.
It's just a little aspect of being an MK. I don't think there is an end to it, and I hope there is an end, because MK lifestyle is what basically made us who we are right now. So our childhood, that's what brought us up. And to stop being an MK would mean letting go of those things, right? So I think it's a part of our identity now, right? So I don't think there's an end to it. Yeah.
You don't think there's an
Yeah.
end to it?
I hope not.
Yeah.
I personally think there's no end to it because we're always our parents' child, you know? And as long as they are missionaries, and they'll forever be our missionaries, even if they retire. And I want to identify myself as MK. I think this is kind of a glorious name. Like, I love MK. Like, I personally want to do MK ministry, and our collaborating organization, MKinos, is MK serving MKs. And our fellow MK elders who have children, they're serving us right now, like college-age students. So I think we can continue to be MKs and serve other MKs as well. Okay, I want to move on.